Dr. Dunn, I'm Andy McConnell. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Andy.
Where are you? What part of the world are you located in?
I'm in West Palm Beach, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Who is this?
That's Dr. Bev Dunn.
Oh, man, okay.
Yeah, Hill's sitting right next to me. We're in the top floor of the Grand Bohemian Hotel in Birmingham right now.
Oh, okay.
That's in Alabama?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Hey, Duke.
Hill, does
I
Hill
changed-
still talk Southern?
Oh, jeez.
Listen, I've been there 4.5 months now. I'm fully back into it.
Woo! That's great.
I how to talk Yankee talk.
Yeah.
Andy, are you going to give him his own computer?
Yeah, he's trying to send something out here. Hold on. You got it?
I'm trying to find what I just.
Well, let's get it later. Let's get you on.
Well, here's what-
Welcome, Dr. Iyer. Welcome, Hank, Ricker. Welcome.
It's Dr. Hey, Frank, how you doing? Unmute your thing on the lower left-hand corner.
You need to
Great.
unmute. Okay.
There you go.
Hi, gentlemen. Shankar here.
Hey, Shankar.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
Hi, Shankar.
Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. Hi, Frank.
Hey, Shankar, are you up at teaching at Rutgers?
Yes.
I went to Rutgers undergrad back in the 70s.
Is that right? Wow. Okay. It's a big
Yeah,
tent.
my family lived in Ocean City, New Jersey, and I took summer courses up there.
Nice.
So I drove up the Garden State Parkway up there all the time to go.
Great. Where did you live?
I grew up in Ocean City, New Jersey, and then went on to school in Pennsylvania, and then down to Clemson, and then Emory. Finished at Emory. It's down school.
Fabulous.
And how are you running a program out with Roseman?
Road program, we do have a plan to start like a Master of Arts and Master of Science. The Roseman has a maxi course as well. So the university is receptive to starting a master's based upon a curriculum that we are developing on behalf of AAID. So that's why I thought it would be nice to be able to cross-share the platform, because this effort can be worked upon synergistically. So the game plan, this is what Dr. Dunson charged us with, to come up with a curriculum that is going to be different than what CODA has proposed. So every time you send a curriculum over, for example, Jaime sent this curriculum over, they shot it down. So there are 5 characteristics that CODA is looking for.
Now, is this the standard as well that you're trying to develop?
Yep. Yes, these are the guidelines, and standards are going to be very difficult to establish because that's going to be based upon competency and proficiency. So we are coming up with guidelines which is going to set itself apart from oral surgery, pros, and perio. So when you look at this basic surgical principles, we took the entire curriculum from oral surgery, the entire curriculum from pros, the entire curriculum from perio. We looked at everything closely and saw what is missing from these specialties. So if you go to CODA with the same package that we've been going for the past 20 years, they're going to deny it. So it needs to be uniquely different. So we have a consultant from CODA, which is Dean Frank Licari. He is a CODA inspector. So he gave us some guidelines as to what we should have in place prior to going to CODA. So this process can be vetted in different schools because many of the schools have some kind of a residency program.
Mm-hmm.
While this is going to be simmering in the pot, we're also developing a Master of Arts. For example, there are several board certified implantologists in our academy. They are going to University of Goth, University of Frankfurt, to get an MSc. Why should they go to a different university? Why can't they get that same MSc and MA in the United States? So the concept was to develop an MA program, which is purely didactic, which is going to be built upon the previously earned credential. So this is mostly like a certificate 1-year program, which will give them a Master of Arts. Master of Science is a 2-year full-time program where they have to be present on site with some rotations to different areas where they need to be exposed. As part of the MSc, they will also get certified in IV sedation, which is the 80 hours. They will also go for rotations in hospitals, rotations in laboratories, rotations in periodontics, rotations in diagnostics, rotations in biomaterials, which is going to be, again, a unique set of curriculum, which is not available to the current postgraduates in perio or pros or oral surgery. So this is something that we are looking at very closely. And since you are bringing this up, maybe we should be looking at it synergistically rather than going in two different paths, because it's only going to be helpful. I understand you already have a nonprofit that is started, which is a good thing. And if we do have a way to get into the schools and residency programs, that'll give us the university credibility, because one of the requirements is that it has to have an affiliation. COIRT requires an affiliation with a hospital or a school. So we're trying to satisfy that. Then it needs to be uniquely, distinctly different than other specialties. Number three, there should be an organization that should be supporting this venture. AID is already part of it. The fourth aspect is to be able to demonstrate there is a body of evidence that's going to support the entire process, which is also present with the AID and ABOI. There has to be a journal attached to this specialty. We have the JOI. So if you look at all of the requirements, we are pretty much right there in terms of where we should be. So now we are looking at the avenues of finding out sites, centers. So this is why it's important that you also are aware of things that are happening parallel. So this is not in competition. This is something that the AID charged us to come up with a sort of a curriculum for a Master of Arts and Master of Science, which again, may not see the light of day, but at least it is a degree that our practitioners can look for. Rather than going to a university in Europe, they can get it right in the United States. So we've approached Roseman. Roseman's very receptive. We thought of about 4 or 5 universities. JU could be one of them. Rutgers would be open. Roseman, Roma Linda already has the Master of Science. Buffalo is very keen on doing a master's. So when you have all these different universities, it's very hard for COIRT not to look at this from a perspective of academic backing. Plus, you also have chairmen who would probably be seeded from our academy, diplomates and fellows. Dr. Bob Buheit is already there. Dr. Hegde is there in Roseman. So we are identifying some easily accessible schools that will be receptive to our curriculum. What is in it for the school? For the schools, they get additional revenue. They'll get revenue from all the procedures that are being developed, and they also pay a tuition to be in the program. So each of the residents will probably pay about $35,000 to $40,000 per annum to be in the program, which is going to be a full-time for an MSc, part-time for the MA program. So MA program, let's say Dave Resnick wants to get a Master of Arts. So we have a curriculum that will build on what he already has been accomplished through the diplomateship. So what are the areas where we can expose him to? Maybe some metallurgy. So there would be some revision of some basic regional anatomy, maybe some physiology. Maybe we'll look into some pathological features or histopathological training. It could be in the field of microbiology. How does it relate to biofilms and so on? So, I mean, there's going to be a body of evidence which is more than what we get exposed in as being a diplomat. So this is going to be, because you have already validated the clinical proficiency. Now, where is the didactic proficiency? That's what we want to try to get through the master's program.
Get me on the.
Okay.
What do you know about the Joint Commission as far as like accreditation of facilities?
Yeah, we have gone through all the requirements for the site. It requires a full-time professor to be on site, working full-time. It also requires certain number of chairs. The facility should be capable of supporting itself. It should be capable of funding itself so that it can sustain the program. The first thing that the university is asking us is show us dollars how it can be sustainable.
Anchor,
Hi, Dr. Tatum.
something I would add to what you were saying. I think the word comprehensive
Would be,
should be in all of our description, comprehensive oral implantology.
yeah, that would be the essence of our effort. Comprehensive implantology, the concept of UNICEF, which nobody else is talking about, the all-inclusive, how.
Okay, well, the two things I was going to say is to have the word comprehensive in it, which nobody else has. Everybody else is teaching implantology, the residencies, implant treatment. We're teaching comprehensive, and we've got the NIRSAP concepts, which are totally unique. Nobody has got that stuff.
To that, yes.
Okay, that sets us apart. Is Frank on yet?
Frank is here.
He is. He's just muted.
Hey, Jack. Haven't seen you in a while.
Hey, Jack.
And Jack?
Jack is frozen.
We're going to get, a little bit
Everybody.
later, we'll get into some legal areas for Frank's comments and clarifications on.
Frank, you're frozen.
I am?
No, you're online. You're good.
You can speak.
I've just been doing what I'm best at, and that's keeping my mouth shut. I'm just going to follow Shanker's lead. That's all. He's going to tell me what we need, and I'll just,
You follow Anchor,
I'll
you
follow
got a
along
lot
with
of
the.
footsteps to fill.
Really, I have nothing to say. I'm just listening.
You recognize that. Big footprints.
Well, basically, Shanker, I appreciate you sharing that, because what we're trying to do is still, JU is still open to the possibility of working with us and being able to use them as an additional institution, and not an institute, but an institution to be able to convey a Master of Science. And then we have a standalone facility. You know, it's in Tennessee. It's not in Jacksonville, but it's in Tennessee, so that we're trying to develop that with JU. So we definitely want to be synergistically working towards success with you and what you've already been successful at Roseman with.
Well, I have a question. Is Roseman a 2-year program or 3-year?
It's got two
2-year.
It's got two different, it has both, a 3-year program and a 2-year program.
Okay.
All right. Frank, we got a question for you. If we have a program with a U.S. school, and can we have residency centers or teaching centers outside of the United States?
That's a great question.
i.e. Vancouver, Canada, or over in Germany?
Are you asking if CODA would recognize them?
Yes or not?
Good question. Don't know. I think
All right.
CODA will do what's forced down their throat politically.
All right. The other question we had, our original business model was to return 20% of the tuition that is paid to the school, i.e. JU, back to the AAID Foundation. Well, AAID is not involved in our model now at this point, but if that 20%, can we cut that out of the budget, or would that go back to the foundation now that we have a foundation set up to do this?
Probably whichever way you wanted to do
It
it.
would come back to the foundation.
Yeah. Would that be income to the foundation or considered a contribution to the foundation?
I do not know that.
Okay.
I
All
don't-
right.
I don't
Well, how
think
they
so.
figured it, if they did it as a contribution, it's a contribution.
All right. The other question we had, Frank, how many centers, in your model of going before CODA would you recommend?
I think you've got a good potential when you say 10. It's hard to ignore 10.
Yeah.
Now, Frank, let me interdict. With JU, the threshold to start the program with them was 15
Matt, call you back. I'm on a Zoom phone conference. All right.
I spent a couple of hours on the phone with Dr. Sapienza within the last several weeks. And that's the first contact we've had other than with Jim Gibney's contact. She knew absolutely nothing about what has transpired within the AAID until our conversation. And I filled her in completely, and it went well. At the end of the program, I'm Hilt and she's Chris. So I have direct access to her and a good working relationship. And she keeps JU completely open to us. She has done a similar endeavor personally in her field of speech pathology or audiology, one or the other. She has developed graduate education within that field. Now, in conversation with her, to the best of my memory, she talked about 15 being the threshold number that we needed for them to make it possible for the university to initiate what they've got, their part of it, that tuition from 15 residents. And we talked about adding 10 residences in the second year would give us 25. Now, Frank, if I'm incorrect, you correct me. In my conversation, I think I have heard you say that if we had those 25 in operation, and after 18 months of operation of the first one, first of the 2-year classes, that if you went to CODA with 25 functioning university-affiliated programs, with the programs a component of the university, Jacksonville University in this case, that you thought that there was a very favorable possibility for CODA to accept them, or the alternative is that you felt that they were fearful of a lawsuit. Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Secondly, let's talk, before we talk about that more, let's talk about the legal relationship. If JU has a legal contract with each of our programs, where that program is a legal component of Jacksonville University, then when you went to CODA with the application, would that circumvent their prohibition to private practices if each of the centers was an integral component legally of Jacksonville University?
That would certainly reduce that, any contra argument. Yeah, I agree with you.
Okay, so right now, we hit 2 of the objections. One, that we don't have enough programs to warrant. That would give us the number of programs. Secondly, that would contradict the idea of private practice involvement. And thirdly, we would be teaching material that no other program, competing program, is teaching. So 3 of the objections seem to me to be covered and countered or met in with those 3.
And all along the way, there would be discussions with ADA personnel. We just wouldn't hop on them at one time. All along the way, there are information exchanges, trying to pave the way, trying to dot the I's, cross the T's informally with them, so they don't feel like they're gangbanged at the last second.
Okay, let me ask you another question, and you feel free to answer it any way you want to. Do you feel free at this point of sharing some of the pitfalls or problems that CODA has from a legal standpoint in a confrontation with us?
They're very paranoid with just cause. I did a Freedom of Information request last week with the Department of Education. Any documents to or from the ADA in the Department of Education and vice versa. They called and asked exactly what we were looking for. I think that's curious, number one. And my response was, we're doing an article on the kinds of things that CODA and the DOE do together. And to that end, we don't know what they do together, so we can't be very specific about what we're looking for. Instant, very defensive about documents and correspondence, maybe videos between the two entities. We're not going to give up because the law is pretty clear about what they have to do. So I guarantee you already, CODA knows that we're looking. So all of these things, they work together. And I'll call Kathy in the near future and just tell her, we want to work with them, but we're going ahead, we're going to develop programs that's going to be hard for them to deny. And if Tony would like to work with me, that's great. Tony is ADA staff. He's a prosthodontist from Milwaukee. He's a good guy, but he's staff. So it's going to be a symbiotic process along the way. So we'll be getting some guidance along the way because they don't want to be looking like Attila the Hun when we're finished. I can't hear a hill.
Hey, Frank, Dave Resnick here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
You know, with what Shanker put out, I mean, are we talking about literally having two different attempts being made here to get the ADA, the code approval towards the residencies, the specialty status? You know, and with his what he laid out, the requirements, you know, with a journal, the full-time director, the university-based, you know, it's definitely a different path than what we're doing. The question in my mind, is there some way that this path can be part of that other path, or is it so different that these two paths just can't really work together?
Which are you talking about, two paths?
Well, Shanker laid out what he thinks the requirements are for specialty status and recognition. Because right now we can't, you know, he talked about the sponsoring organization. We don't really have a sponsoring organization with this foundation and what we're attempting to do. I don't believe the AID is sponsoring it. And I think when we had them involved with it, it created such tremendous problems and animosity that that's not an affiliation to even try to do again, at least not at this point.
Is Bernie on the call yet?
No, Duke is.
It should be on the call.
I saw Bernie a second ago.
It's vital that he's on the call because he was a party to the discussion and we laid out I'm just trying to see if I can share the screen of the specialty requirement.
Shanker, how many were you going to have in each one of your 2-year and your 3-year program? How many residents were you going to take per year?
Up to the school. So typically for the masters, there's no limit. You can go 10 or 15 because it's purely a didactic curriculum. The MSc, you are probably going to limit to about 5 or 6 in each.
So that's 5 or 6, and then the other one 10 to 15.
Correct.
That was didactic.
What is
David,
the situation there?
we had a little problem with an internal revolt last year in the academy. And unfortunately, one of the outcomes, I was going around to different states the last couple of years selling the ABDS. And 1 or 2 of the states actually put ABDS in their regulations so that if you were recognized, if your credentials were recognized by the ABDS, you could call yourself a specialist in that state. One that stands out in my mind, especially, is Iowa. They were the first state to actually change the reg to put ABDS in their regulation. Shortly after this revolution began, I was discharged as counselor for the ABDS, and now ABDS has informed the academy we have nothing to do with them. They took back all their files that the academy was holding. They've gone totally separate. We can't get their minutes. We don't know what's going on. And of course, 3 of the 4 boards blessed by the ABDS, 3 of them are now recognized by the ADA. So technically speaking, there's only 1 recognized board by the ABDS, and that's the ABOI, was also distancing themselves from the AAID. So, politics just got too messy. And I'm sure down the path, this new path that Shanker's talking about could probably easily become affiliated with the AAID. I'm just projecting here, but I'm projecting based on what's already happened.
Is Bernie on the call?
Wait, I just talked to him. He's 4th in line checking out. He will be on the call in probably about 5-10 minutes. He's
Well,
checking out.
you were next. I was going to ask if you on, because the same question I was going to have for him, I would have for you as the incoming president. It's my feeling that there will be no possibility of any kind of commitment from the AAID for at least 2 years or perhaps longer. But I would hope and I would feel like that there may be a commitment of support for the objectives and the aims of this foundation. How do you feel about that, you? And I'll include Frank in that question.
Well, let me add to that. Dr. Duke, if we could remove all the requirement of any kind of financial support from AAID and be self-funding for the first couple of years,
3 years.
first 3 years, could we still get AAID
Support.
affiliation
Affiliation
or support? It wouldn't cost them a dime.
Okay, so let me reply. I would say it would be favorable. What's happened, we've been so busy with the Minnesota thing. Honest to God, I spend 7 hours a day on stuff for AAID. I would not have any energy left to do it. Hopefully in August, Lord willing, this will be over. I personally, Shanker, you can speak to this too. I don't know anybody other than those that opposed it before. Cooper, Wong, Jaime, those people, they are the ones that are against it. I don't see effort. I don't see it from Bernie. He would tell you that you have to have a residency program in a university to have the best chance. But I don't think he would tell you that JU should not be utilized as a possible alternate route. And Shanker, why don't you chime in? I personally think the AAID, if they just didn't have to commit right now, because we're double our attorney fees with this Minnesota thing. So Shanker, tell me what your feeling is, buddy.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I prefaced it by saying there's a good synergistic involvement that is possible. If I can share the screen of what coders resistance was, I want to educate the entire group as to the problems that were faced in the past, so that we can kind of look at that as well as we are formulating the current plan. So who is the moderator so I can share my screen?
Andy Burton.
Andy. No, I don't. Andy Burton, are you the host?
I am. There you go.
Okay.
I see it. You've got it up, Shanker.
Got it. Okay, so I want you to know that this was the application, and Frank was instrumental. And during my presidency, this was submitted to CODA, right, implant dentistry, and I need some of his curriculum, and these were the rejections. This is what the ADA rejected, or CODA rejected. So when they looked at the application, they had a conference call with all these doctors. Campbell I know very well, and Frank also knows quite a few. The first thing that they were objecting to, a well-defined body of established scientific dental knowledge exists that underlies the general dentistry education area. Knowledge that is in part large distinct from or more detailed other than form of education already in accreditation review. So they're saying you're not showing us anything that we don't know already. Next problem was the body of knowledge.
Shanker, hold on just a minute, bro. Can you go back to that one more time?
Yeah. The CDEL.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be happy to send this across to everybody.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
That's easier. So this way you know what were the objections. So when we are putting in the new application, we address these. So we can all work towards how this can bypassed. Okay, so the next problem they talked was the body of knowledge is sufficient to educate individuals in a distinct advanced education area of general dentistry, not merely one or more techniques. So this is where we need to kind of include the NIRISAP concept as part of a discipline. So we are trying to say we are going to be involving bone biology in a more natural form. So they don't want techniques. They're looking at the evidence that is going towards the science that is going to be teaching residents something different.
Well, by the way, Shanker, NIRSAB's going digital.
Good, excellent. Now, Dr. Tatum did share that information. A sufficient number of established programs exist and contain structured curricula, qualified faculty, and enrolled individuals so that accreditation can be a viable method of quality assurance. This is where the hospital and the universities come into play. The request did not contain a documented historical development and evolution of programs in dentistry. So when we look at these programs, you're all looking at the different types of settings. The private practice setting could be a satellite clinic, which can be part of an externship program where the residents rotate out of a university, right? I don't think they will allow, as of yet, a completely an in-office residency program that can be accredited because of lack of standardization. Then number D, education programs are the equivalent of at least 12-month full-time academic year in length. The programs must be academic programs sponsored by an institution, accredited by an agency recognized by the United States Department of Education, or accredited by accrediting organization. So this clearly states that you have to be in a hospital or a university.
We have that in JU with the foundation.
So JU will definitely be one of the sites that will be part of the overall concept. Now, other evidence that programs are bona fide educational programs, experiences rather than a series of CE programs, like maxi courses will not be considered. You can use it as an addendum. The quality of advanced education program is important to the health and care of the general public. So they have this outlined already. So this is what brought us back to square one. And that is when we thought of getting into a different mode. And this really helped the ABDS, because why should we go after CODA when we are already approved by ABDS? We have shown the validity and the strength of ABDS in different states. So Frank, if we can, is there a number of specialties that should be part of ABDS? Can AID cannot be standalone and we can still push through ABDS? If we can get the reins of ABDS back to you, don't you think we already have a winning horse that we can keep moving? Or do we have to go back to CODA?
Good question. When Craig Busey was alive, he and I together went to a couple of states, and he was supporting the ABDS from and then a trust standpoint. He'd give his presentation. He'd say, I encourage the states to accept another, other than the ADA, another recognized entity. And on his next slide, he'd say, such as ABDS.
Would be great.
I couldn't ask for more.
Yes,
When
it's
he
right there.
passed away, I haven't been back to the ADA. So I would hope that they would appoint someone else to carry that same theme. I don't know why they wouldn't, especially if they feel I'm sniffing around the Department of Education. So I don't know the answer to that.
So what if Bernie and Duke got together and said, okay, this is the charge for the AIDBOT to enter into talks with ABDS and have ABDS really follow the guidelines that was originally supposed to accomplish, because we funded the entire ABDS and take the power of the people that are right there. Leadership.
The president and another officer of the ABDS were Kim Gowie and Kevin O'Grady, I believe. So it's two of our people that are in the decision-making seat, and presumably, I'm assuming those two are the ones that hold the connection away from the AAID.
A big mistake.
Well, also let us remember the three people or three groups that became specialists they are still in the ABDS. They have not left it. Even if the AAID paid their dues to stay in it, it would have 4 members in it. There's got to be a way that the AAID can have great influence on ABDS, even though those 2 people that you mentioned are there right now. I don't think those are lifetime appointments.
Hey, Frank, Dave Resnick here. My understanding after, watching all this for all these years is that without AAID financial support, the ABDS virtually has no money, and they can't generate enough money. The other groups don't want to pay the dues, can't afford to pay the dues, and that I can't see how the organization can even exist without the AAID basically being the sugar daddy for the ABDS.
When I was there, I was going out to the state boards one-on-one and to the dental organizations, showing them how to develop certifying boards. AGD was eager, happy. They had a certifying board. I met with them. They said, Frank, we're going to do it. We're going to submit an application. We're going to refine some things internally with the certifying board. ACD, the same. A couple other boards were hot. They were ready to go. I have no idea what's happened to them. I was encouraging the ABDS. You got to be, you're selling something that's new. They're a little bit, gun shy. And I think that all stopped when I left. It was ready to take off.
Do you agree though with me? Am I right that without AAID having footed the bills?
Yeah, I don't know.
I agree with you, David. I agree with you.
I don't know how they're paying their legal bills. Maybe they're not doing
so
it.
I mean, I think right now you got people that have taken it over, so to speak, with the intention of seeing it fail.
Right, but they still need, they're in our budget.
They are. Okay, I didn't know that.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Tanker,
Let me,
your budget?
let me come back to Frank.
Copy, mate.
May I come back?
I couldn't.
Yeah, you're back on.
Let me come back to Frank. Again, coming back to this thing that CODA replaced the ADA as a gatekeeper for specialty. Correct?
If I could just interject, the new commission, the recognized dental specialties, I have rather close contact with someone on the commission. They voted down oral facial pain. They voted it down. They found out a week later their vote was overturned by the appeals commission. They were barely aware that an appeals commission existed. They cannot find out the names of those 5 people on the appeals commission.
Wow.
They don't even know who overturned them. So that's, from my perspective, that's great. Some of them are very upset. They spent hours and hours talking about it, deliberating it. Whatever time they spent was summarily rejected by this unnamed commission.
Written by a committee of 5 unknown, controlled by the ADA. That's a
Frank, do you think that's just an attempt then on the ADA to still control the process?
That's the point I was getting to right here, for us to realize that. And that is a mind trap, what am I trying to say? Not a torpedo,
Landmine.
landmine. That's a landmine legally.
I mean, I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, they have dug a grave to put themselves in legally right there.
Right. And this member of the commission who connects with me wants me to get the FTC involved. So they
That's
could.
what you do best.
Bernie's on now, so if you got questions for him, Bernie, the first question is, doesn't the AAID pay the dues for ABDS? You're on mute. You're on mute, Bernie.
Yes, there's a $15,000, maybe it's biannual, if not annual dues that the AAID pays for the ABDS for us to be a member. There at one point, the largest amount of members, there were 4 members. I don't know if we still have 4 members or if we're the lone member in this ABDS space now.
You know how
Shankar, you
it
can
used-
speak to that.
Yeah, they didn't mean to interrupt, Bernie, but it used to be that, we provided the director, the legal
Yeah.
counsel, we basically footed their bills.
Yeah, we
Aren't
did.
Aren't they basically broke without what we had provided and going to become a non-entity in that regard financially?
David, you bring up a good point, well stated. My understanding, we actually, in my mind, created the leverage point for anesthesia to become a specialty, for craniofacial pain to become a specialty. Basically, what happened is you have 4 members of a entity. The 4th member escapes me at this point, but they were actually suing each other. So who is it, Shankar?
It was craniofacial pain and orofacial pain. That's AOP.
So craniofacial pain and orofacial pain, one of them has been granted specialty status within the last 4 or 5 months. I almost believe that the ADA looked at this situation, and anybody can correct me on this, where we are the 800-pound gorilla in the room. They didn't want us based on turf battles, based on oral surgery. So what they did, we basically created the leverage point for anesthesia to become a specialty. They need to be paying our dues for the rest of the time for that assistance. And then this craniofacial pain, and the idea behind that is to undermine ABDS because you no longer have any members. I think that's a very fair statement to suggest. And so we'd be the lone member, and basically they reduced us back to who we were before we went about this strategic approach of American Board of Dental Specialties, much like we did in medicine. So that's kind of where we find ourselves. But we, as David has said, we provided the executive director. They were on loan from us based on our compensation through AAID. And we put the 15 grand in, and those other 4 entities put 15 grand in. Where they are now, I don't know if they're going to stay with us, because the idea with Mike Mashney when he was anesthesia's president was that, we went in this together, we're going to stay with you guys, and basically what we will benefit from is we are going to be recognized as a specialty in the in the ADA specialty space, and we will be looked at as specialists in the American Board of Dental Specialties. So they looked at it as we'll have two. Now, a new president takes the helm. Who's to suggest that the board of the Anesthesia Association says, we're not going to do that anymore. But I think Mike Mashley's intent was genuine in that he wanted to maintain both in loyalty to the ABDS. Craniofacial pain is relatively new in this space. Who's to say where they're going to be?
Yeah, and
But would you
the
not
AIT
agree that it would be a good investment, at least for 1 year, to pay the dues those other three people to get us off the ground? Is that a possibility if they were going to drop out?
Yeah, I'm a lone soldier in this discussion, Duke. I would say we do everything we can to keep them in. And however we coerce them to stay in and entice them with the idea that you're going to be in the state of, let's say, Ohio or North Carolina, you're recognizing the ADA specialty space, and you're also recognizing the ABDS specialty space. And that in and of itself should be a unique distinction that's extraordinarily attractive to somebody seeking your services. I think I'd rather approach it there first, because the idea of the academy paying $45,000 for three other entities that, along with ourselves, could be tricky, especially when you give the politics of where we are as an organization with the ABDS, the ABOI, and the AID. I mean, we have to be conscious, because I believe Kim Gowie's the president of the ABDS, and we have to see where he is and where his allegiance lie, relative to truly the AID, what we stand for, what we represent for the last 69, now almost 70 years now. We got to get those guys honest. I'm just speaking from my core of my heart. It's good to see some faces. Yeah, it's good to see some faces. Andy and Dr. Tatum, if you could allow me to acknowledge some brilliant geniuses. Dr. Lemons, it's great to see you. Bev Dunn, what a treat to see you. I've talked to you on the phone quite a bit. It's an honor. I see my guy James Miller. I see my guy Keith out in California. Tom Chess is somewhere. I don't know where he is. And it's good to see Joseph Lau on the call. It's an honor for me to have the privilege to serve as the president currently, bring you this information. Hopefully I can help and foster, and we can get into, this is what I call great work. This is what you get up in the morning for. And you can't go anywhere. You got to stay strong, all right?
Well, I'm here.
All right.
But
Thank you,
right now on this subject, we are a commander whose troops have deserted to the other side. That's the way we are right now.
Help may I interject a little bit here? I'm not sure who's running the meeting.
I'm not.
Go for it, Jack.
The point is, I probably am one of the few that have had the opportunity to review programs previously at dental schools and present that information to the professional organizations for accreditation and certification. The key, my involvement was in the old days called dental materials, subsequently biomaterials and biomechanics in both postgraduate and dental school programs. The key to what I was doing, and I think is going to be an issue here that requires substantial documentation, is the validation and verification of the faculty and the content that the faculty will provide in such a complex program. Now, I realize there's been a fair amount done in this area, but it has to be evaluated. And I, in times past, actually visited these individuals, visited the schools, and looked at the content of what they were doing to be sure there was consistency and that it was possible to verify that before it was presented to the American Dental Association or other organizations, depending upon the time, primarily the American Association of Dental Schools. And that was a substantial effort and eventually evolved where 4 or 5 of us had to meet together and then everyone had to come to mutual agreement with the program in terms of content. We're currently doing that for our dental school program content for review for 2 years from now. And that requires all of the faculty spending considerable amount of time reviewing written information. So I want to first congratulate you on what you're doing here, which is greatly needed. But I hope you realize what you're asking for. Be very cautious here because the content of what you're going to need to do to get this approval is very, very significant, I think, as all of you realize. So that's enough for me advisory.
Jack, I am sending you the latest copy we have of the work we did preliminarily on curriculum.
Yes, I saw that. I saw part of that help.
Well, you may not have seen the latest, in other words, the latest I could find. So I'm sending it to you to look at it for your comments and recommendations and critique and criticism.
The point that
and
I was
direction.
trying, I agree and I have no problem with what you're developing, Hilt. But the point I was trying to make, someone or some group has to validate and verify that all of the faculty that are in the program are knowledgeable and are teaching consistently within those guidelines. And that's going to be difficult with a group of practitioners that have been doing their own thing. And I'm not talking about the clinical, I'm talking about the didactic.
The didactic, Jack, will come through JU. They will deliver the didactic program, and we will put together the faculty with their participation. And so it would be the same thing that would go out to all of the residents through JU. So there would be complete consistency and commonality there.
The validation and the verification of the consistency of knowledge among all the instructors is going to come from the GPS program that's added to this.
That's in the clinical training.
So that everybody's on the same page, getting the same information, both the instructors and the students. Everybody's on the same page teaching the same thing.
Does JU have a dental school that I don't know about?
No.
No.
Okay, so this is going to be educators from JU that are going to do this?
No, we'll be furnishing most of the faculty for the didactic, people like you and Gene Roberts and other academics that participate with us.
Fantastic. I haven't seen Gene in years.
Well, I've had conversations, but he's still breathing and functioning.
Fantastic. Okay.
All right. So, Andy, if I may just add to the concept of, I'm going to share my screen about what COIRT is looking for in terms of the standards. Somebody asked about the standards. So if I may share the screen, because there was a talk about how we standardize the centers and the faculty. So this is what Perio is going through whenever they have an accreditation. So they have all these standards, must, competencies, competent, in-depth understanding. But when it comes to the facility, the program must document its effectiveness in using a formal and ongoing outcome assessment to include measures of advanced education of the student and resident achievement. This should be principles of ethics. Financial resources must be sufficient to support the program's stated goals and objectives. The sponsoring institution, be it JU or a hospital, must ensure that support from entities outside of the institution does not compromise the teaching, clinical, and research programs of the components of the program. So this is where we need to kind of have every faculty accredited by JU. So they need to have contracts in place, and then use of sites where educational activity occurs. The primary sponsor of the education program must accept full responsibility for the quality of education provided in all sites where educational activity occurs. All arrangements with sites where educational activity occurs not owned by sponsoring institution must be formalized by means of current written agreements that clearly define the roles and responsibility of the parties. Designation of a single program director, teaching staff for calibration, availability of adequate staff, student-resident oversight and responsibility, educational objectives of the program, and each financial institution's commitment. Then, program director and teaching staff. The program must be administered by one director who is board certified in the respective specialty program. All program directors, that is different, we have the board. Then the program director must be appointed to the sponsoring institution and have sufficient authority and time to achieve the educational goals and objectives of the program. So it cannot be done part-time. And assess the program effectiveness in meeting its goals. Documentation of all program activities must be ensured by the program director and available for review. So then this is for Perio. Use of a faculty, I mean, that the program director can pretty much have that leeway. Select student residents qualified to undertake specialty program in implantology unless the program is sponsored by a federal service. That won't apply to us. The program director must prepare graduates to seek certification. That's again part of it. Faculty to be standardized, and the program director, etc. So this is all about the program. Then facilities. The program must document its compliance with institution's policy and applicable regulation of local, state, and federal agencies, including but not limited to radiation hygiene and protection, ionizing radiation, etc. Policies must be provided to all students is again the facility, and it should be accessible. And what they say is you should have direct supervision at all times. Adequate clinical and radiographic facilities must be available. Hospital facilities available to enhance the clinical program. Facilities should be available to support research. Clinical photography, that's okay. Student resident access to all these. Curriculum and program duration, that's easy to achieve.
Hurry.
Biomedical sciences, they tell you all of the sciences, etc. And I mean, there is a template that could be utilized. We also have, criteria for selection and so on. So once they have the sites, that site will be evaluated. So if you have multiple sites, each of them is considered an independent site, which means it has to follow all of the regulations that CODA would like to see in place. So again, I will share this document. I know all of you are working very hard to create the didactic, but there's also a facility component, a clinical component, and compliance by the local authorities in terms of the oversight. Jack, correct me if I'm wrong. I know you've been with the university for a very, very long time. So CODA comes for site visit once every 2 to 3 years, and they will come and evaluate the experience of the residents, and they have a set checklist that they follow, correct?
Correct. And what we have is they not only come, but we hire consultants to come in advance. And ours is normally a 7-year cycle. But we have to approve all of the programs. Then the residency programs that have specialties run their own schedule. But the dental school is what we're doing right now. We're right in the middle of it, and all of the departments are required to fill in this documentation like you have listed for approval. And then the specialty programs themselves, as an independent specialty program, I've not done that previously, so I do not know. I've just done dental school programs.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, this is again available. So I'll be happy to copy PROS, perio, and oral surgery so we can kind of look at it so that when we are planning this, we need to keep this in the back of the mind to allow ourselves to be evaluated by CODA if you want them to come for a site visit.
Yeah, and it's usually a group of people. I would represent biomaterials and biomechanic dental materials as a part usually of prosthodontics.
Shanker, is there a whole separate accreditation also required by the DOE?
No, that is already done by the educational institution. Once, that's why they want it approved by a teaching hospital or adult school. Both of them have the approval.
All right.
So
And
DOE,
basically, that's what JU is offering us because they have the DOE approval.
right, right. That will be a good affiliation to have. But when you're asking for CODA, they then will have to bless a satellite center
Totally
or
different.
multiple centers. Each of them will say affiliated to JU, and then they can have their own, set of guidelines. I think that is a doable sequence.
Do you
I've
think
been
that-
involved, excuse me, I've
Go
been
ahead,
involved in this. Biomedical engineering is done by the Department of Education at the university. And that's quite a different process and different documentation than at the dental school. So I'm not exactly sure that all of that will be applicable, but it's very important that they have that approval. Excuse me for interrupting.
No, thanks, Jack. I was just curious, would the being accredited by the Joint Commission for those facilities, does that help us out?
I think any approvals will help.
Gentlemen, this is Keith Long out in California. My mentor in anesthesia is Kenneth Lee down in Southern California. He's a dentist anesthesiologist, and he's just a wonderful human being. I know that the residents doing dental anesthesiology from NYU rotate through his office. They spend, I think it's 3 months there. So he may be a person to speak with as far as getting a facility accredited for what we're speaking about.
Well, that and there's a program down here in Birmingham at the Foundry that has that accreditation as well. And I think they have a satellite clinic up in, it's your student, Dr. McCracken's clinic, Dr. Jack. I think they've got the accreditation for their Foundry and then for the second facility that they're doing up in Abingdon, Virginia.
Yes, Dr. McCracken was my PhD student, absolutely excellent educator, knowledgeable person. His affiliation, not only with Virginia, but also is through New York University.
Right.
So he has multiple connections, multiple programs, but he continues to have a significant percentage of time at the university as a part of one of our large grant activities. So I see him fairly regularly and will be perfectly willing to coordinate and ask his assistance, however.
I spoke to him and he's volunteered to help us with accreditation or the facilities.
Excellent.
Bernie, are you still there? Bernie, are you online with us still?
Yeah, I'm still with you.
Bernie, I just wanted to verify, we talked about it with Dr. Duke. I wanted to talk to you about you. If our group that's putting the foundation together, if we remove any financial requirement of support from AAID, can we still get the intellectual support of AAID to help have them be involved with our program? Because I think right now we're into a position where we can remove any requirement for the first 3 years of financial support from AAID.
Andy, I think we can do that. I feel confident that we can do that. Financial.
All right.
That's tremendous.
If you could do that and Dr. Duke can do it, we're all on board, because I think we've got a pathway.
You would be part of our sponsoring. Though you have no financial obligation, you would be our.
Right.
Yeah, I would be. Duke, I feel like we can usher that in with a lot of confidence.
Because
And Shanker, I'd love to come up and sit down with Andy Burton and brainstorm with you and see if we can like hitch our wagons to the same train and get through the door together.
Yeah, I shared the same feeling, Bernie, that right now we've been so busy with Minnesota, but I don't have, other than the opposition for Minnesota. Almost everybody I talk to is in favor of the JU program. They just don't have the time and energy till we get through with what we're doing.
That's fine. We can take that off your plate. That's fine. If it's required.
If you could take Minnesota off my plate, brother, I want you to do it.
Hey,
Yeah,
you talk to Dave Resnick.
You would be the president, Andy, if you could do that.
You complain to Dave Resnick. He's the one responsible for your problem.
I think Dave,
Yes,
we owe you
he
a
is. I
gratitude.
thank him.
He should have kept his mouth shut. I heard him on the other side of the room.
I was in Puerto Rico when that went down. But Dave, I think you saved the organization for all of us. We owe you.
We don't know yet. Let's just see what happens. I hope you're right.
All
I
right.
absolutely hope so.
All right, one final, let's wrap this up. We wanted to talk about funding. Anybody identify any sources of funding? I've got a few. Any of y'all out there that can think of anything or think of anyone that we can present? We're in the process. Before we can actually go ahead with funding, Dave Resnick had a great input that we need to have our business plan rock solid. We need to have our curriculum down, and I think that's where we need to hook up with you, Dr. Iyer. I think we need to, Andy Burton and I can.
And Jack.
And Jack, yes, with the curricula. And then the business plan, the curricula, what was the other one? The business plan, the curriculum, what was the third?
And
the budget, the budget. Then we're ready to hit fundraising. I'm going to see if I can get Dr. Duke and Hilton, Andy Burton to go up. I've got family involved in banking software systems up in Philadelphia that are heavy hitters. And I want to see what we can find from there. I mean, they travel in the circles of people that are donating to stuff like this and looking for opportunities like this. And Dr. Frank, one final thing I just wanted to reiterate. If we have an association with JU and the facilities are JU sponsored, then we can still run private practices.
JU component.
The JU components, we can still run our private practices in that same facility.
Well,
And
you're
go
treating
before COVID.
patients. It's got to operate financially. That's what you're talking about. But,
The separation between the teaching institution and the private practice part in the same location is what I'm referring to.
well, the universities do that with their faculty clinics.
I don't think you heard me on that one.
Did Frank hear you or not?
I don't know. Frank, are you there?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Frank, I wanted to address the separation between the university affiliation teaching portion of use of a private practice clinic and a private practice clinic running out of the same facility. It's going to be an issue for us.
Running out of the same facility. You're talking physically running out of JU or their practice?
No. The JU director's positions would be in private practices around the country. Would that be an issue?
I don't, no, with the proper paperwork, I don't see how it would.
Okay, all right. That answers all the questions I got. Fundraising.
Yeah, well, I think we don't want to run this too long. It's a burden for anybody. We've been at just over an hour now. So we need to try to, I think we ought to wind up in the next few minutes.
Yes.
So that this isn't something you fear dragging out. But we do need to focus possibilities. And where's Tom? Tom's at the bottom there. Bev up there. Daddy Warbucks. He really wanted to underwrite the whole thing, but I told him I just didn't want us to impose on him that way. I just wanted him to help us figure out some other Daddy Warbucks around that could help us. Do you hear me, Bev?
I hear you.
Okay, you're not smiling yet.
I'm smiling now.
Okay, but we want to, Andy has got some family and some other, and Andy is prepared to make some very sizable contributions to this that he's talked about. Seed money he's already done and some sizable things. But we're looking at, we've got to raise the funds to operate this, project it out over the next 3 years, and whatever numbers we come to accept as being realistic. And there are, if some of you will know individuals or companies or foundations that are supportive of endeavors like we have. So I want you all to be thinking about it and offering that information in either developing them yourself for us, or as we finalize our core information that we'll use in this approach, let's kind of have some direction of where we're going to go with this information to solicit the funds. And my goodness, the monies we're talking about as far as philanthropic endeavors is just a pebble in the ocean. But we don't have that pebble right now, and we've got to figure out a way to develop it. So we need original thought and input from anybody and everybody that can as we're putting together this core information. And then I would think, that we, do you want to have another meeting in 1 week or 2 weeks?
What I would love to be able to do is to finalize a budget with JU. We got some work to do on our end. We'll finalize the business plan and finalize a curriculum. If we could get a copy of the Shanker, if we could get a copy of the, have you finished the guidelines for the CODA approval yet, or?
So this is work in progress. I mean, it's probably going to take another couple of weeks before we have it in final form. Jim and I have been working,
Jim's been killing himself on that.
So I'll be happy to send you.
Yeah, let us know when you get it done, and then we can try to tailor our curricula towards that, because we're in the formative stages of all that stuff right now. So I think we need to formalize the curricula, the budget, and the business plan before we meet up again. And then at that point, review what we have and hopefully be all on the same page still.
I have a question.
Yes, sir, Dr. Deb.
Okay. You may have already addressed this, but I think that as we are asking for donations to reach our budget, that there should be something in place that this goes into a fund that if we can't use it, they're giving their money back.
Oh, yes.
He already has that set up.
Yeah, that's all set up, Dr.
Okay.
Deb. Yeah, we have the 5013C foundation all set up, and the funds are to go for this. And if they don't, they go back to the people.
100%.
Okay, perfect. All right.
100%. All right, and we need to be thinking among our members and retired members, we very well may have some people within our own group who can make very sizable contributions.
The way we have it set up, way it's set up right now, there's a 501c3 corporation approved by the IRS. There is a bank account attached to that for the larger donations. We did a second GoFundMe page, and Dr. Duke, we've changed the name of it since I talked to you the other day. It's now the Comprehensive Oral Implant Residency Foundation. And if you go to the GoFundMe page and type in COIRF, it'll pull up the foundation out of Auburn, Alabama. I used to live down there, and my accountant's down there, and my banks are down there. Everything's down in Auburn, Alabama. So the GoFundMe page was set up for smaller contributions, people that want to donate between $5,000 and $2,000. they can just go on there and donate there if they decide to do that. So I'll send out an email to y'all identifying the fund in the GoFundMe page. You can send that out to the smaller donors. The larger donors would go into the bank account. The GoFundMe page, we pay 2.9% on the funds that go through there. There's
GoFundMe,
on the GoFundMe.
2.9.
There's
that would not come back.
No, there's 10,000 in the GoFundMe account, and there's another 10,000 in the foundation's account. So we have a total of 20, and we're Andy Burton and I are talking about a Kickstart third version of this, and we're looking at 5,000 going into that. And then I'm working on some other connections and considering raising my personal contribution to this as well. But I want to see how some of this goes first. And before I can hit the heavy hitters, again, I've got to have more ironed out
Why don't
paperwork.
we, instead of setting a date for next meeting,
Just
why don't we see how we progress?
mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking hopefully in maybe 2 weeks, we can bring our nut together, but let's a week ahead, we set a meeting when we're far enough along.
All right, so we'll be in touch about within the next 2 to 3 weeks about our next meeting.
Well, when we see how we come,
Okay.
get to come together, but we give everybody a week in advance notice, but hopefully we meet in 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
That sounds good to me. Guys, I appreciate all your time and effort and input here.
Thanks,
Bernie,
everybody.
thank you.
Bernie, good to see you. Dr.
Andrew, nice to see you.
Guys.
Good to see everybody.
Dr. Duke, take care.
Have a
I'll talk
great
to you
day.
soon.
Okay, fine, buddy. Bye-bye.
I'm so appreciative for everybody being here. Thank you.
Bernie, are you coming back to our planet eventually?
Yeah, I'm gonna come
What?
back, but you know what? I'm gonna need some help.
What
You know what I
is it?
need, dude. You know what I need, David.
We're gonna send
Bye-bye.
a Russian shuttle up for you.
Bye-bye, Joe.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Keith.
Adios.
Thanks, guys. Andy Burton.
Yeah, buddy. Good to see you. Looks like sunshiny in California.
It's really pretty, man. Just sitting outside watching the birds, having the summer solstice from
Oh, is it-
Anderson Valley. Listen to all you hot shots.
Shit, man. It's just you and me. Well, Tom's still on here, but you know, it's good. That's fun to see what's going on and trying to help develop this thing. So it's exciting.
It really is. And if you guys ever want somebody to go with you to one of these places, man, and you know, I'd be happy to travel. I'm kind of trying to live a little bit better life than working all the time. So I'm always looking for somewhere to go.
Good. Yeah, we're trying to figure this thing out. We keep Hilt involved, but there's some numbers that keep coming out of Hilt that nobody can figure out where the hell they're coming from.
Yeah, I hear you. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually text the lady that writes the checks at Tribal Health and see if they'd be interested in, you know, because I do 90% of their implant dentistry for them, and see if they'd be interested in donating to this just cause. I can't hear you anymore, boss. Still can't hear you. Just give me a call, man, when you get a second.
How about this? Can you hear me now?